Hi, everybody. It's Joe Cioffi. Sorry, I'm just a few minutes late, but I'm here, and it's Friday night, and we are, of course, focused on the blocking pattern that's going to be developing in about a week. And that's the first point that I want to make here to everyone, because predictably, in these situations, we begin to start to see all sorts of posts and stories and rumors. And I am just going to tell you, and those of you who have been with me for quite a while now, you guys kind of know what my approach is and how I feel about all this sort of stuff. We need to see how this is all going to play out. We need to get the block to develop. That's actually still about a week away. So why don't we wait for that to happen before everybody starts jumping off whatever deep end of the pool they happen to be by? Hearing all sorts of nonsense at this stage of the game. It's way too early to speculate beyond in the long term. We can talk about the blocking pattern. We can talk about how it is going to set up, but with regards to anything specific, it's really kind of silly at this point. And we'll look at the models in just a second. Now, let's address what's going on tonight, of course, because it is very, very cold. Temperatures today settled in the 30s up here in my neck of the woods, and we are already down in the mid-20s to around 30 as temperatures continue to fall. This has been quite an air mass, and you have to sort of seasonally adjust these things. Here we are at November the 10th, okay? The average high is still up in the middle 50s up in my area, which is the New York City, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Hudson Valley, low to mid 50s for highs. We are seeing temperatures that today were not out of the 30s, so anywhere from 15 to 20 degrees below average. Now, you take that and translate that to an air mass in January when the average high is around 37 or 38, and you're talking about a day where temperatures wouldn't be getting out of the teens, and in parts of interior upstate New York and up in New England, some places would probably be in the single digits or even below zero all day. So this was indeed a very cold air mass. Now, this is yesterday's GFS. As we look in the long term for next Sunday, just to review, what a block looks like. Instead of having the normal west to east motion across the United States with warmer air to the south and colder air to the north, what happens is high pressure builds across the polar regions, but specifically across Greenland. This is what we call a western-based block, and as a result, these upper lows that you see, say the one in the Gulf of Alaska, but particularly the one that's sitting over into the northeast and out in the Atlantic, would actually be in a normal atmosphere, probably much further to the north, and the flow across the United States would be west to east. Look how far south the southern end of the jet is. I mean, it goes all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico and across Florida. And, of course, we're talking about colder than normal air up and down the eastern seaboard, while you've got this big blocking high that's building across the top. So everything just kind of gets shifted southward. And as long as the block holds, that you'll experience colder than normal temps in areas further south than you otherwise would. And in situations like this, you could also wind up with storm developments, but you still run into the same questions regarding storm developments, and that is we see you could have all the blocking in the world, but if the pattern is just not in the right place, you've got a problem, okay? So you're not going to get much. It'll just be cold and dry. Or, if you're under some sort of upper low, you're going to wind up with not so much cold and dry, but maybe you'll wind up with snow showers. And if you're up in the lake effect area, you'll get lake effect stuff. So, there's just way too many variables to talk about at this point. So I'm just going to keep it relatively short tonight, by the way. Let me get the interact on. So why is this not working correctly? Why is this not letting me do this? Oh, here we go, finally. Okay. All right, so we're looking at the new GFS model run starting from this evening. So we're going to take you on the surface and show you how that high translates into the east. By the way, while all of this is going on, the weather in the east is going to be pretty tranquil through at least the middle part of next week. In the west, we actually have several systems that are going to be coming ashore. The first one comes ashore over the weekend with rain and heavy snow inland, and then another one comes in as we go into Tuesday night and Wednesday, and that one is actually going to extend pretty far to the south into California, and there's more energy to come as we move into next weekend. Now, meanwhile, again, much of next week quiet until we start to get a weather system moving across. You can see how the GFS handles this, taking it across the northern lakes, sort of swings what we call an occluded front, and at the point of occlusion, you have another low that develops there in southern New England and moves to the east. And this is now going to be responding to the blocking pattern as we move into Thanksgiving week. This particular run of the GFS was not especially bullish with regards to any snow. I mean, if you look here, as we move into Thanksgiving Day, it takes the next low up into the northern lakes. But I would just suggest that because you do have blocking, you might wind up with something further south over time, and that's what we're going to be looking at. But the bottom line is that the models are all, pretty much showing this blockiness, and we are going to go along with it. It also, to me, at least from what I'm seeing, we might have this block last for a while, so we may actually have it lasting at least through the end of the month, maybe a little bit beyond that. And you can see it on the upper air here, that fairly well-developed upper high that eventually comes out of the Atlantic, and then the pressures, you see how they all start to rise. You start to go out, all that blue disappears and the orange appears. That's pressures rising. And you can see how the jet, I'm just going to go back again. Much of the jet stream here in Canada, as that block develops, the whole jet translates southward. And at this point, which is next Saturday, you have a low out southeast of Newfoundland. You have a trough and an upper low forming over the Great Lakes. And then you have another one that swings into the east as we head toward Thanksgiving. And the big upper high, higher than normal pressures all across the northern latitudes, northern Canada and up over Greenland, and that pretty well stays in place. So we're going to go into this pattern. What it means remains to be seen, and I certainly would not get into any of the kind of all the different, let's call them rumors that are out there. Okay, you got to see how all of this evolves. I want to take a look at some of the weather going on elsewhere. Again, I'm not going to have a whole lot of time tonight, so we'll just go through this relatively quickly. And we're going to start with, I'm going to go to Europe here. Let's start with our European map for Saturday. And we do have, the usual array of weather systems. Looks like a nice little low there that comes off of the Mediterranean and then moves northeastward. So there's actually a fairly large area of snow that develops in the Italian Alps and in southeastern Germany. And then that swings on and moves away to the east. We've got a couple of weather systems coming into the British Isles, but nothing crazy. There's a stronger low that goes north of Scotland later next week. And then after that, we get, of course, into, let's call it, as I call it, squirrel land. So we really don't know what is going to happen in the long range, as the variability always gets wider. Why don't we take a look at southeastern Canada for my friends that are up in the Canadian Maritimes and also elsewhere. There's our low right now, that cold air coming into the east, so you guys are getting some snow in parts of southeastern Canada. As we move into next week, looks like a couple of weather systems go by to your south, a little bit of rain and snow toward the end of next week. As that blocking pattern starts to take hold, you can see that big storm that forms east of Newfoundland there, and then another one that follows with some rain and snow, and yet another one with some rain and snow as we head toward the last weekend of the month of November. A month from now, this blocking pattern we'll be dealing with much colder air just because the normals are lower, so you'd probably be seeing much more widespread snow activity through all of this. But I'm going to be somewhat bullish going forward over the idea of colder than normal temperatures. And yeah, you know what? I will at least say that if you're going to have snowfall in the eastern part of the United States, you're going to want a pattern like this. But I just don't know, how this all plays. Here's the 10-day snowfall for southeastern Canada. And you can see some big snow amounts start to pop up over parts of Newfoundland, down over through New Brunswick, and of course and through much of Labrador and Quebec, doing very well. And as we shift over into the United States, we'll take a look at the 10-day snowfall thanks to forecast by the GFS. Still much more going on in the west, and at least through the 10th day, which is Monday, November 20th, not a whole lot of snow, except for maybe northern areas of New York State, Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and Maine, getting into some slightly more significant amounts, but nothing crazy yet. The bulk of the snow, the bulk of the heavy snow still going on throughout much of the west, where it has been for the time being. We're going to need a little time for the pattern to transition over, and we'll take a look at Europe really fast and look at their snowfall map for the next 10 days, and you start to see a much more extensive area of snow. Eastern France, and especially in the elevated areas on through the Italian and Swiss Alps, much of southern Germany, and on up and through Austria and southern Poland and the Ukraine and beyond. So, and also in England, by the way, showing some snows up in northern England and on up, especially into Scotland and even into parts of Ireland, probably in the elevated areas more so than any place else. So let me join the chat now. So hang on, let me bring myself up to the screen. You know what it is, it's a Friday night, and with no major storm going on, I just kind of want to take it a bit easy here. So it will move me to the top. Let me just go through the chat here and see who's on and say hello to everybody. So, and yep, you're all here, which is great. Good to see everybody. Ryan Kong, you are new, the Asian Weather Boy. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Michael Zimmerman, you're saying so no snow from the storm on the 22nd. Okay, let me just again say you can't. You're going to drive yourself crazy going from run to run with this stuff. You can't really look at it that way. Look at the fact that you've got the blocking pattern setting up and wait to see how models come along over time. We are, and I'm not saying that there is going to be snow. I'm just saying that to reach that conclusion at this point for something that's still 7 days away from getting underway and probably 10 days away from getting firmly established, you can't reach conclusions like that at this point, okay? It doesn't work that way. And you'll sleep better and be calmer if you kind of take the approach I'm suggesting. So, just breathe, okay? Just everybody breathe, all right? There's no date written down yet in stone if anything is going to happen. Mark Carroll, we do not. Let me just lay down a couple of things here. We don't talk about the sun angle, and we do not talk about the warm ground theory. Okay, because for one thing, the temperatures tonight have kind of eliminated the concept of the warm ground is silly. It really is. The warm ground would really impacts snowfalls for about 30 minutes at most. You could look back at the storms from last February in the Northeast, where we had temperatures up in the 60s and even the low 70s, and the next day 10 inches or more of snow falling. Warm ground is just, that's something we do not espouse to, so it doesn't work. And, of course, we've got those record lows. You're in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, Michael Zimmerman? Okay, so even more so for you. Just kind of, Relax, let the pattern play itself out first. And don't let the models take you on a different ride every time you see it. We know the blocking's coming, so we're just going to have to wait to see how it all sets up. Okay? Raymond is on, so good hi to you. James NASCAR. Okay, let's see. David Fuller. I don't think you're going to see any flurry activity tomorrow, David. It's going to be bright and sunny with hardly any clouds during the day on Saturday. If you were going to get flurries, you would have gotten them today. And that, there were a couple of very, very light flurries showing up on the radar, and that was about it. Golden Twisters in New Hampshire, and it's in the single digits. Nice. Very cold. I mean, we're going to see some really some records going by the boards here tonight in many locations. And we might even do it again Saturday night into Sunday morning, depending on cloud cover. That's going to be a key. And by the way, this freeze, this air mass, as we've been showing you the last couple of days, we're talking about temperatures below 32 or lower, all the way down into South Carolina and down into parts of Tennessee. So this is an extensive freeze here. And this makes, by the way, this winter, going into this, through this fall and into this winter, much different than the last couple of winters because of the fact that we did not really get an air mass like this. And we certainly did not go into any kind of blocking pattern. So already we are seeing some big differences from last year. And it is amazing when you think about it. It wasn't that many days ago when we were in the upper 60s to around 70. I mean, now we're taking temperatures down into the teens and low 20s, and in places further north, teens and even some single digits. I mean, really, when you think about it, that's an incredible flip that has occurred. And we are also the fact that we don't see the ridge in the east anymore, that we're seeing this blocking pattern setting up. And really, it's been, you probably have to go back. I mean, we've had blocking patterns set up for short periods of time, but this is, from what I'm seeing in the upper air, this is a throwback to maybe 2010, 2011, or 2009, 2010, when the blocking patterns were extensive and set up for weeks and weeks at a time. So, huge difference here. We've definitely flipped a big switch in terms of the overall pattern, and I am going to be very curious to see how this is all going to play out when we head through Thanksgiving week and beyond. So if you're a snow lover and a cold weather lover, if you want a pattern that gives you both, you will have it. However, again, bear in mind that you could have all the blocking in the world. If the troughs are in the wrong position, if the storms are not tracking the way that they should, or the way you would like, you could be sorely disappointed. We also have yet to see the extent of how cold it may be. I think some people I've heard some ridiculous numbers being thrown out for next week once the blocking sets up. Why don't we just wait and see what happens? Definitely going to be below normal, and in some places below normal by a large degree. But if we're 10 degrees below normal, it still means temperatures up into the 40s this time of year over much of the southern areas of the Northeast and into the mid-Atlantic states. All right, folks, going to call it a night at this point. I will be with you over the weekend, however, when we will have time to look at things a bit deeper. Those of you who are on Long Island on Sunday, I will be at the North Babylon Library in Deer Park, on Deer Park Avenue at 2 p.m., and we'll be talking more about winter and winter weather and the upcoming weather patterns. So if you'd like, by all means, do join us there. It's, again, the North Babylon Library at 2 p.m. in North Babylon, New York. And I do have a couple of other talks scheduled, by the way, in the month of December. Might have one in Westchester County in Elmsford. So once I get some details on that, we will, of course, let you know. And by all means, check out the latest website posts on meteorologistjoecioffi.com. And Angry Ben has all the New York City weather, nycweathernow.com, and Long Island weather on weatherlongisland.com. Have a great evening, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.